Hello, everybody. How are you doing? How are you? It's good to see you. So, let's get started. Breaking news. The United States has been granted permission to appeal on all grounds, right? So I'm going to go through all 5 grounds in a second. I was covering Assange's High Court hearing this morning. This wasn't at the Old Bailey, nor was it at Westminster Magistrates Court. This was at the High Court, okay? So this took place at the Royal Courts of Justice, as it's also known. And this is what it looks like, right? A lot of people say it looks like something of a Harry Potter. Anyway, so I was attending the court, and I'm going to break down what happened. This is devastating news. This is very bad. I mean, I'm going to go through it bit by bit, okay? So the first thing over here, I just want to play you a short speech by Stella Moris outside the court. So Stella Moris is Assange's partner. She's the mother of his 2 children. This is what she had to say before the proceedings started, okay? Before they took place.
The case against the U.S. government 7 months ago, yet he remains in Belmarsh prison. What is this, if not punishment by process? Yesterday, Julian and I were permitted to embrace for the first time in 17 months. Throughout my visit in Belmarsh, I held his warm hand. Julian has been denied the love and affection of his family for so long. Julian and the kids will never get this time back. This shouldn't be happening. The U.S. government is exploiting the inherently unfair arrangement between the U.S. and the U.K.
Thank you!
They're exploiting the inherently unfair extradition arrangements with this country in order to arbitrarily prolong his imprisonment. The imprisonment of an innocent man accused of practicing journalism. Julian has asked me to thank all of you for coming and for continuing to fight for his freedom.
So speaking of this extradition arrangement, she's referring to, of course, to the extradition treaty, which is translated into the Extradition Act. And as you remember, on January 4th, at Westminster Magistrates Court, Judge Baretzer, who was overseeing the extradition hearing, she decided not to extradite Julian Assange. She said, no, you're not going to the United States. Even though I think, meaning the judge, even though I think you're all of these bad things that the United States claims you are, I'm not going to let you go there because you are depressed and there's a heightened risk of suicide if you go there. So she blocked the extradition based on Section 91. And this is something that I thought she might do because she had done it, not she, but because this had been used, it had been cited in the case of Lori Love. Gary McKinnon's extradition was also ultimately withdrawn by Theresa May, citing health concerns. And so, as you can remember, this is the ruling, right, from January 4th. She said, it is therefore unnecessary. Hold on, it's right at the end. There we go. So I order the discharge of Julian Paul Assange pursuant to Section 91(3) of the Extradition Act, right? And the thing is, the United States doesn't like this. The United States has come along and said, well, hold on a second. We think you did a lot of mistakes. And they're disputing her judgment. And I'm going to read you the points because we got this from the New York Times last month. These are the points that the United States wanted to dispute. So the United States wanted to come and say, we want to appeal this decision on 5 grounds. Okay? They were given 3 out of the 5 grounds, not all 5. So they were given A, B, and E, but they were not given C and D. Okay? So number 3 and 4. Now, I'm going to read them to you, okay? So the first is that the judge made errors of law in her application of the test under Section 91 of the 2003 Act, which is what I just showed you here. That's Section 91, right? And had she applied the test correctly, she would have not discharged Mr. Assange. B, the second is that the judge, having decided that the threshold for discharge under Section 91 was met, ought to have notified the requesting state of her provisional view so as to afford it the opportunity of offering assurances to the court. Now, the other one which they were granted is E, and it says the fifth ground is the United States has provided the United Kingdom with a package of assurances which are responsive to the district judge's specific findings in this case. In particular, the United States has provided assurances that Mr. Assange will not be subject to SAM's, special administrative measures, or imprisoned at ADX unless he were to do something subsequent to the offering of these assurances that meet the test for the imposition of SAM's or designation to ADX. The U.S. has also provided an assurance that the U.S. will consent to Mr. Assange being transferred to Australia to serve any custodial sentence imposed on him. So we've gone through these before. They're basically saying, like, look, we promised we won't lock him up in solitary confinement, but we still reserve the right to lock him up under solitary confinement whenever we want. And he can serve his sentence in Australia, even though it could take him decades to get through the appeals process to then potentially do that, which is his right to do so anyway. And C and D were the ones that they didn't get. And so today at the High Court, what happened? The United States came and they disputed this, and they wanted to argue that they have the right to dispute the judge's decision on grounds C and D. Okay? Let me read you those grounds. C. The third is that the district judge, having concluded that the principal psychiatric expert called on behalf of the defense, Professor Koppelman, had misled her on a material issue, ought to have ruled that his evidence was inadmissible. Alternatively, if it could be said that his lack of independence went to weight rather than admissibility, the district ought to have attributed no or far less weight to his opinion as to the severity of Mr. Assange's mental condition than she did. Okay, and then they argue that therefore she wouldn't have discharged him. And D, the fourth ground is that the district judge erred in her overall assessment of the evidence going to the risk of suicide. So this is very important because they're saying that the key expert witness in terms of Assange's health, right? Because there were numerous medical experts, but Professor Koppelman was the main one, and he argued that Assange is depressed. He also spent time with him more than any of the other experts, and he did a psychiatric evaluation of Assange, and he said that he's in very bad shape, and if he gets extradited, there's a heightened risk of suicide. And so they're saying that he misled her. Why did he mislead her? Well, because in his first report, he said that Assange has a partner, but he didn't disclose her name, Stella Moris. He didn't disclose her name for obvious reasons, because the relationship was not public. The CIA is literally trying to steal DNA from his kids' diapers. I mean, they're spying on him in the embassy. Of course he wasn't going to disclose that. It's logical. And the other ground, so with D, they're saying that, just to finish my point, in his psychiatric evaluation, he didn't only rely on his own, expertise. He actually asked Stella Moris. She's in the report. And so they're trying to say, like, this is a conflict of interest, basically. Like, she's cited as, giving weight to Assange's health, but you didn't tell us that she's his partner. So that's, and they also argued that he's relying on Assange's self-reporting. Yeah, well, I mean, every psychiatrist in the world does that. Every psychiatrist relies on their patient's self-reporting. That's, what else are you supposed to do? So that's ground C. And D is that they're saying, well, in general, not just regarding Professor Koppelman, in general, the judge didn't take into account all of the medical evidence in regards to Assange's psychiatric evaluation, which includes, of course, the prosecution's expert witnesses, meaning Fazell and Blackwood. So what happened today? Let's go through it. I have a long thread. I was live tweeting this as it was taking place. And yeah, it's a lot. It's it's really a lot. So let's go through it. Okay, so I gave some background information here, and basically what the defense was arguing, they were saying several things. They were saying that, look, Assange, he was in perfect health because he was able to undertake several journalistic, well, they didn't say journalistic activities, they're trying to argue the opposite, but they said that, look, he was in the embassy, he was doing a show with RT, he was doing WikiLeaks, like he wasn't depressed, right? Because everyone, everyone who has depression is definitely, it's non-functional depression. This is ridiculous. So they're trying to make this point. They're saying that he clearly wasn't depressed, his health wasn't that bad, he can be extradited. And they're saying also, right? They're saying also that the self-reporting doesn't work, right? I don't understand what that means. I think any psychiatrist in the world relies on self-reporting for their patients. They're saying that, Dr. Koppelman, he basically concealed Stella's identity. Well, again, we've gone through this point, and the defense argued this. The defense responded, well, Dr. Koppelman did talk about her identity afterwards. After the relationship was made public, he did talk about it, right? He did reveal that this partner is Stella Moris, and he had said in his initial report that she has kids. Prosecution, they don't care, right? And then in the second point, in regards to... So just one quote I'm going to read you from Dobbin, who's for the prosecution. She said, if an expert has misled the court, he has failed in his duty, right? They were very harsh. There are some other harsh comments I'll read to you. And again, as I said, Dobbin referred to Blackwood and Feazell. These are the two medical experts called by the prosecution. And she said that the judge didn't take into account their expertise, and that she ruled exclusively on the defenses. You see, this is Judge Boretzer. What does she say in January? She says, I prefer the expert opinions of Professor Koppelman and Dr. Dilly to those of Dr. Blackwood. Dr. Blackwood did not accept Professor Koppelman's diagnosis of severe depressive episode with psychotic features from 2019, and he did not consider that Mr. Assange met the diagnostic threshold for an autism spectrum disorder. Okay? So they're unhappy that the judge accepted the evidence from the defense's expert witnesses. Yes, well, obviously they're unhappy about that, but that doesn't mean that they should be thrown out. But this is what they're trying to do. This is what they're trying to do. And this is very concerning. This is very concerning. So as you can see, just one second, I just want to show you this just enormous thread, because I was at one point basically transcribing literally everything they were saying. I made use of my 120 words per minute typing speed, and I tried to transcribe most of everything, right? So then the defense, it was their turn to talk about the points, and they made some very excellent points. I mean, they broke this down very succinctly, right? They broke this down very clearly. I'm gonna recap it for you just like I did here. So, the United States prosecution is challenging the decision on January 4th not to extradite Julian Assange to the United States. They have been granted permission by the UK to appeal on 3 out of 5 grounds, right? We went through them. These grounds are A, B, and E. They are contesting the other 2 today in court, which is C and D. As I said, the first is that a lead psychiatrist, this is Koppelman, misled the court about certain details in his psychiatric evaluation of Assange. The other is that the judge erred in her overall assessment of the evidence regarding the risk of suicide. And the prosecution alleges that in his psychiatric evaluation, Koppelman relied heavily on self-reporting of Assange and did not disclose that Stella Moris, who was also in the report, was his partner and the mother of his children. The prosecution also argues that the judge disregarded the evidence brought forward by the 2 medical experts, Feazell and Blackwood, which the prosecution called. Now, the defense, what did they respond? They pointed out that Koppelman did mention Assange had a life partner and kids, but he did not reveal the identity because, again, of the CIA spying, the threats, and other fears or concerns that would have come about before Assange and Moris disclosed their relationship. Now, the defense also argued that it would not be appropriate to completely throw out Koppelman's psychiatric evaluation based on a single error, seeing as how the judge considered it impartial and applied the Turner test, concluding Assange would be at risk of suicide, not by choice. Okay? So the judge says this in her ruling in January. She said that even though Koppelman misled her on this point, and he should have disclosed this, she applied the Turner test, and she concluded that Julian Assange is at risk of suicide because of the conditions that he is in, not because he's choosing to be suicidal, right? So this, whether, he disclosed Stella Moris' name or not, this is irrelevant. The defense admits Koppelman's disclosures would have been more appropriate before, but despite this, the judge still agreed with his psychiatric evaluation and that of Dr. Dealey, who's the other defense, one of the other defense expert witnesses in the medical field. And that the judge, Boretzer, did not agree with the psychiatric evaluations of Blackwood and Feazell, who were called by the prosecution. Okay? So they made their arguments. And I think this is very concerning because obviously this is important, but do you see how the conversation has shifted now from press freedoms and it's like completely about health? It's equally important, but they've succeeded in having the entire conversation now about his health. And here comes the blow. Here comes the blow, because the justices, okay, I'm going to give you their names again because I wrote them in the thread. It's Holly Road, and I forgot the other one. You'll forgive me. Lord Justice Holly Road, and I'm looking for the other one's name. Mrs. Justice. It'll come up in a second. But in any case, Mr. Holyrood, Lord Justice Holyrood is the one who gave the decision, and he said that he did not agree with Justice Swift, because you have to understand this decision over here, only to give the United States 3 out of 5 grounds. This was done by Justice Swift, okay? And he overturned this, and now he gave all grounds to the United States. He said that, Lord Justice Holyrood, he said that usually a higher court will not, a court of appeal won't come and overturn or try to discard the expert testimony of a lower court, right? Of an expert witness in the lower court. By the way, the other justice is Mrs. Justice Farby. I just recalled her name, right? But anyway, Mrs. Justice Farby did not speak so much. It was more Mr. Justice, Lord Justice Holyrood. Lord Justice Holyrood, he said again, I repeat, that it's unusual for a court of appeal to call into question the expert testimony from a lower court. However, this is one of those times, apparently, according to him. And what does he do? He said that apparently, let me pull it up for you. I mean, this is outrageous. He said that apparently, Professor Koppelman should have made an application. Okay, here it is. Take a look. So he said that Professor Koppelman should have been aware of the Criminal Procedure Rule 19.9, quote, when he chose instead to omit stating that he knew of the respondent's recent and current relationship with Ms. Morris and the children when expressing opinion such as on solitary confinement and suicide and etc. Okay? And according to Lord Justice Holyrood, Professor Koppelman essentially failed to make an application to omit this information, in which was cited in his psychiatric evaluation of Assange. So apparently he was supposed to make some kind of application asking to defer this omission, and basically like telling the court, yeah, I don't want to put this into my statement. I'm telling you that I'm keeping the secret for now because it's confidential, etc. So this is a technicality, because you must understand what's going on here. The UK High Court is now going to let the United States come in and say that Julian Assange is not depressed, that Julian Assange is not suicidal, that Julian Assange won't be at a heightened risk of suicide if he's taken to the United States and put in solitary confinement there. All because the lead medical expert didn't mention the name of his partner. What does that have to do with his mental health? Look, it would be one thing if Professor Koppelman's report relied entirely on Stella Moris. Then you could argue, yes, this is a conflict of interest. It didn't. It didn't rely entirely on Stella Moris, and it's not even wrong, even though it relies on her testimony because she knows him very well. On the contrary, it should carry more weight. But it doesn't rely just on her input. It relies on Assange's input. The doctor himself, Professor Koppelman, the neuropsychiatrist, he himself is an expert in this field. He's one of the best, one of the leading neuropsychiatrists. And he's not the only medical expert who dealt with Assange. We have Dr. Dealey, who's involved as well. Neil Smeltzer, who's the special rapporteur on torture for the United Nations, he visited Assange in the prison with 2 doctors, right? And he stated that Assange is being tortured and should be released immediately. There are numerous other doctors who testified, other medical experts who testified in the extradition hearing, which we covered here. I covered this on Twitter and with you right here on the channel, who not only talked about his mental health, but his physical health. There was, one case where they were talking about how Assange couldn't even go to the dentist. Right? And the risk of infection this could create, etc., etc. The lack of sunlight, exercise, all of this. There are numerous medical experts who are all corroborating this. You even have doctors for Assange. Like you have dozens and dozens and dozens of people in every respective field: journalists, lawyers, historians, doctors, medical experts, who are all saying this man is being tortured and this is an affront on press freedoms. And now the United States has been giving permission by the United Kingdom to appeal on all grounds. So they can come in and say, no, we don't think he's depressed. Look, the lead medical expert lied about his partner's identity. Again, I don't see how that negates the fact that he's depressed and is suicidal, and that I think anyone who's taken to a max prison, a federal supermax, and put under special administrative measures will be suicidal. This is absurd. This is obscene. And once again, do you see how they've shifted this away from press freedoms? This topic did not even come up. It wasn't even discussed. Nothing from WikiLeaks. Zero. No war crimes. Nothing. It's all about his health. And now it's getting even worse. Now they're even going to remove the only safeguard. And I need to tell you something, man. That Assange looked horrible. I just saw him. He looks and sounds horrible. And I'm not saying that like to make fun of him. I'm saying this because it's heartbreaking. The dude he just turned 50, right? We covered that. He looks 70. He looks 70. You know, he was wearing a white shirt. He had a black mask. He had glasses on, and he was sitting in a chair during the first half. And he was sitting in this room in Belmarsh prison, with blue walls. And his hair was ruffled, and he had like a tie that wasn't really on. It was kind of just hanging over his shirt. He looked really messed up. Anyone would look messed up because it's torture. That's what it is. The guy's been in arbitrary detention for 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy. He's been 2 years now in Belmarsh prison. Yeah, no wonder anyone would look like shit. And more than that. And then some. Really bad. And I heard him speak at the end, and he sounded terrible. Really terrible. It's heartbreaking. So this idea that they're going to go to the high court and try to discredit the psychiatric evidence against, not against him, about him, saying that he's depressed, that he has Asperger's, he has a heightened risk of suicide, that extradition would be detrimental and it would have adverse effects on his health. You really don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out. Why are they turning this into an issue of trying to discredit the medical experts? There's not just one of them. There are several of them. And the defense argued this. The defense was saying, look, it's not just it's not just Professor Koppelman's opinion. The judge knows that she was, quote unquote, allegedly misled about Stella Moris' identity. And she still accepted his medical opinion, and not just his, but that of Dr. Deely's as well. So she had all the evidence. She was the decision maker, and she decided that it would be bad for Assange's health. So there's nothing to overturn here. There's nothing to change. And now the High Court is like, no. All because of a technicality, the U.S. can go ahead and appeal on these grounds. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's already bad enough they can appeal on any grounds. The whole thing should be thrown out, given all of these shocking revelations that, this Sigurdur Thordarson, the guy from Iceland who was spying on Assange, who was working with the FBI as an informant against Assange, and also embezzling money from WikiLeaks, and who fabricated his witness testimony, in exchange for immunity. This bombshell revelation from just a few weeks ago, I mean, any reasonable judge would throw this out based on that alone. I can't even count the number of expert witnesses that testified on behalf of Assange. It was like 40 or something. I think 40 plus. Do you know how many the prosecution had? They're like 3 or 4. I'm not kidding. Because who would side with the prosecution on this? Save for 3 or 4 people. A handful, literally a handful. This is so messed up, man. It really is. So it's really messed up. And I'm telling you, they cited multiple the defense cited multiple quotes from Baretzer's ruling in January to support the fact that Koppelman made an accurate assessment of Assange's health, right? Here, Judge Baretzer says, quote, "For reasons already given, I have already rejected Dr. Blackwood." Dr. Blackwood is called by the prosecution. "I have already rejected Dr. Blackwood's more optimistic view of Mr. Assange's mental health." Because you remember they were saying ridiculous things, these medical expert witnesses called by the prosecution. They were saying ridiculous things like Assange, well, he's very strong-willed, so it's very unlikely he'll commit suicide. Oh, so like you haven't tortured him enough? What does that even mean? And then they were saying things like that the suicide rate is lower in the U.S. Yeah, but they weren't disclosing the fact that you have a higher prison rate of incarceration, right? The United States has more people in jail than anyone else, than any other country. So they weren't putting that into context, of course. And they were saying things like, well, even in a prison population, a high suicide risk would have to be judged according to that environment, which again is ridiculous, because if you're gonna base it on that, well, the guy's already in prison, so and he's suicidal now, so isn't that enough evidence that this would transferring him to an even worse prison would make that worse? No, of course. You can't reason with them, right? So they were making these absurd arguments. And then for the defense, you had dozens and dozens and dozens, literally dozens of witnesses. I can't even remember all their names, there's so many. I can remember most of them. But you get the picture. You get the picture. And it's not just medical. I'm talking everything in terms of journalism, in terms of, just ethics and the adverse effect this would have on press freedoms and the history of the Espionage Act. I mean, Noam Chomsky testifying, so many people, really, the best in their fields, in their respective fields. So, unfortunately, Lord Justice Holyrood ruled in favor of the United States, and now they will be granted a full appeal, and this will take place on October 27th and 28th. And again, we must be very clear about this. The process is the punishment. Assange has been in the embassy 7 years. He's been in Belmarsh prison 2 years. This guy's not serving a sentence. You cannot come to me and tell me that a journalist has to be put in a prison, never mind a maximum security prison, and he's not serving a fucking sentence. This is a non-violent man. I don't tolerate this. How could anyone tolerate this and call this a democracy? The dude he's in tatters after being persecuted for a decade. And that's their goal. It doesn't even matter if they get a conviction or not. The goal is to break him. And man, I got to tell you something. The way I saw him now, this was worse than last year. I'm telling you, he looked, blimey. I mean, really messed up, man. And again, it's heartbreaking because I didn't even recognize him at first. You know that? It took me a whole minute to recognize that was him. I couldn't understand why this old guy was on the screen. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is that Assange? And then I looked behind him and I could read the Her Majesty's Prison Belmarsh. I was like, oh my God, it's him? Yeah, really. You want to come here and tell me that this guy deserves that, but George Bush, Tony Blair, they shouldn't be in jail? No, I don't tolerate this. I don't accept this. I don't. No. And I just want to play you. I want to play you a little statement from Stella Moris, Assange's partner, the mother of his children, after the court, and
the judges today said that the court would allow the factual evidence to be argued at the final hearing on the 27th and 28th of October. They'll allow the factual evidence to be argued. What has not been discussed today is why I feared for my safety and the safety of our children and Julian's life. The constant threats and intimidation that we have endured for years, which has been terrorizing us and has been terrorizing Julian for over 10 years. The threats against me, threats against our children, death threats against Julian's eldest son, Daniel. Threats on Julian's life. Threats of a 175-year prison sentence, and the actual ongoing imprisonment of a journalist for doing his job. These are sustained threats to his life for the past 10 years. These are not just items of law. This is our lives. We have the right to exist. We have a right to live, and we have a right for this nightmare to come to an end once and for all. Thank you.
Stella, the US government is questioning the statements that have been made about Julian's mental health, saying that they are overblown. How do you feel when you hear that?
Solidarity, Stella.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking, man. It's really heartbreaking, you know, and I can't overstate enough the way he looked. It's really scary. I mean, this guy is a non-violent, innocent man, and the way I saw him sitting there, it wasn't like last year, which was bad enough, like a year ago at the extradition hearing. No, like you really see physically even more now. Like the only thing he did, he published documents that they don't like, and it's documents that were in the public interest. They show governments, giant actors like the UK, like the US, their allies in Europe, kidnapping people, torturing them. I mean, obscene acts of murder and war, and you see the punishment that they did to him. It's really. I just want to show you something. So. This is from Reporters Without Borders. This is from Rebecca Vincent. So I'm glad she was able to get in, although, from how she was talking about it, they had some issues at first, right? I mean, let me just read you this thread. So Rebecca's cool. I met her in London. She's from Reporters Without Borders. She says, "It makes me incredibly angry how much time that could be spent on substantive work in very deserving cases around the world is lost fighting the constantly evolving barriers thrown up by the UK judicial system simply to gain access to proceedings in Julian Assange's case. When I trial monitor in other countries, I simply turn up at court, where I'm respected as a professional NGO observer and allowed to do my job. At every step of the Assange proceedings, getting in and bearing witness has been made as difficult and physically uncomfortable as possible." And then she says, "I look back at some of the ridiculous issues we faced in monitoring earlier phases of Assange's extradition proceedings. Nothing is normal about this case." Right? And yeah, there are many instances here, right? She made a whole thread back in January about this, the day before the ruling. And unfortunately, Stefania Morizzi, who's a great friend and a lovely journalist, she worked with Glenn Greenwald on the Snowden files. She worked as a media partner with WikiLeaks. I had her on the program here several times. Just a few weeks ago, we talked about Assange. And she also didn't get in. Like, they didn't send her any confirmation. And then, look, I'll just show you over here, right? This is obscene. So, look at this. This is Stefania. She posted this yesterday, right? She used to write for Espresso and Repubblica, and now she writes for Il Fatto Quotidiano. And she said, "Unfortunately, I won't be able to watch the hearing due to lack of access to the video link platform." She says, "I didn't get any reply." And then afterwards, she says, "The UK authorities even monitor my tweets as my DPA request shows, so I doubt they were not aware of my interest in getting a video link access. I sent them emails and called them. I thought I have heard from them at the last minute. As always, I still haven't." You have to realize that having as little press coverage of the Julian Assange case as possible is a precise strategy. In 2011, the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, wrote, quote, then the Julian Assange hearing was all rather boring and technical, which of course is precisely what I wanted to happen, unquote. And over here, she also tweeted afterwards, "This morning, the UK authorities provided me access to the video link platform for watching the Assange extradition hearing just 20 minutes before the hearing. I was traveling. As a result, I could not watch it." I mean, They don't make it easy, I must say. I don't know. I think this is outrageous that she didn't get in on time. This is really unfair and unacceptable. So, there are a lot of people who showed up. As usual, Team Assange was there, all of the lovely supporters. Shout out to them. I want to play a clip of Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn member of parliament, former Labour leader. Take a look at what he had to say.
I hope the court accepts the decision of the lower court that he should not be removed to the United States. My view is that he should be released. His health is clearly at risk while he's in Belmarsh. It'd be at worse risk if he was in a Supermax prison in the United States. He's a man that has actually done the whole world a very good service, as some of our newspapers recognised, like The Guardian, in the earliest stages of this. So I say to the journalists that are here, the British journalists that are here, I have plenty of issues with the way the media report things in this country. I have good reason to have good complaints about the way the media treat individuals in this country. But I hold no bitterness. What I recognise is that journalism is a very dangerous and risky profession when done properly. I think of journalists in Mexico, in Colombia, in India. I think of journalists in many countries, in Egypt and many other places, that have risked all to tell the truth about corruption, risked all to make sure the rest of the world knows the truth of what's being done in their name. Julian Assange, to me, walks in that great tradition of great, fearless journalists. We're here to support Julian Assange and demand his freedom. And we'll be here as many times as it takes to continue making that call. Thank you, everyone, today for standing up for the truth.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy is a top lad. He really is. How many politicians do you know are ready to stand up for Julian Assange? You can count them on 10, you can count them on 10 fingers, man. You can count them on 2 hands. Very, very few. And Jeremy's right. He has very good reason to despise the media after what they did to him, right? This whole anti-Semitism smear campaign, just various smears, right? They went on and on and on until they finally got rid of him as Labour leader because, he was proposing a real socialist, leftist, anti-imperialist platform, a pro-Palestinian platform, which they, of course, could not tolerate. How could you have the leader of the Labour Party, the leader of the Labour Party as a socialist? This is unheard of. You need to have someone like Keir Starmer, right, who cooperates with the Tories. So he had to go. And the media was instrumental in getting rid of Jeremy Corbyn. And as you can see, he still comes up and he fights for press freedoms, right? Even, and of course, we're not comparing those gutter journalists to Assange, of course not. But, he makes a very good point. And as he said, we'll be here as many times as we need to be. And I really respect him for that. This is just another reason why I respect Corbyn a lot. I know people draw some similarities between him and Bernie Sanders. There are a few, especially in their speeches end of 2019. But standing up for Assange is not one of them, unfortunately. Very few of them will do that. And so he's unequivocal, and I really appreciate that. And other people who are also unequivocal and relentless, and I really admire, are the activists, right, who are always queuing up for us and who are always there every week. Really, I mean, I can't respect them enough. So I just want to show you a clip over here. I said shout out to the activists, the great activists of Team Assange, who are in front of the High Court protesting. Whistleblower and former UK Ambassador Craig Murray, who's also the victim of a political witch hunt, jailed a few weeks ago over his alleged jigsaw identification. They were also shouting his name, so that's very good. It's so insane because it looks and sounds so dystopian, like something you would see in a movie, like, and yet this is reality. It's reality, and it starts, bit by bit. And I wouldn't even say that this is a bit. This is very just blatant and right out there in the open. We're going to screw with press freedom. And you have to understand something. Like, I need to tell you something, which I witnessed today in the court. This wasn't just an attack on press freedoms. This was a mockery of medical sciences and mental health. I mean, I think anyone who understands, and as I'm telling you, as you now know, what happened in there, not just today, but of course during the extradition hearing, because they brought up again many of the same arguments, saying that the risk of suicide is not that high. we can provide you with assurances if he's extradited. They were saying that, he has depression maybe, but not that bad depression. Because keep in mind, even the prosecution were agreeing he has depression, but they were just saying it's not that bad, which is absurd. I think, on the list of things that could make depression worse, being extradited to a federal supermax is way up there. So if you call yourself a medical professional and you think that this is okay, I really don't know what to say. And this is really unfortunate because they're really trying to drive home this point that it's not even about press freedoms anymore. We're going after him, right? Like just I think Alexander over at Consortium News brought this up, that just look at the time it took from January, from the ruling not to extradite, until now in July and August to have a hearing. 6-7 months, right? And that's just indicative of how relentless the United States is. They don't want to go to appeal on 3 out of 5 grounds. No, they want all grounds. They want all 5. They want to secure this guy's extradition. They are so determined to get him. This should scare the crap out of you. This is unreal, honestly. It's absolutely unreal. They're not happy. They're not happy with 3 out of 5. They want all 5. They want to secure an extradition, and the conviction is already a foregone conclusion. Assange was convicted before there was an indictment in their eyes. Not literally. He's not actually convicted. I'm saying in the United States, they're bound. They're guaranteed to find him guilty if he's extradited, God forbid. So this is crazy how relentless they are, and I really fear that the saving grace, the last minute solution that helped Lori Love or Gary McKinnon, who also have Asperger's, which was also cited as a reason to prevent and stop their extraditions to the United States, again for crimes that are they exaggerated. I talked with Gary. I interviewed him. I've spoken with him. I even asked him about these assurances that they're giving Assange, and they're worthless. They tried to give Gary assurances too, and they were also worthless. They wouldn't even put them on paper back then. And Gary's really like the first guy they tried the extradition treaty on, like this template. They were doing it against him before it was even finalized. Think of that, right? So this is a very, very political tool, and they also lied about what he did. It was just obscene. And the same thing here. Just this time it's about press freedoms, and it's I'm very disheartened because the whole conversation here, or let's say at least half of it, should be about press freedoms. Yes, Assange's health is important. He clearly cannot be in Belmarsh prison, never mind extradited, as all the medical expert witnesses have testified and corroborated and repeated countless times. But now the whole conversation is about that. And I find this very insulting, and I find it very, this is really like an attack on his privacy and his mental health and his well-being and his family, because, they're going to go to all lengths to get an extradition. And this shouldn't be about that. This should be about press freedoms. And I just don't know what to say, man. When you look at the district court, they sided with the United States on the political charges. And now when it's going to the preliminary hearing at the high court, they're siding with the United States on the grounds of appeal regarding his psychiatric evaluations and well-being. This is not good. This is terrible. They're making a mockery out of journalism, out of press freedoms, and also out of mental health. This is absolutely unacceptable. It's really bad. And once again, even if he gets out, and I hope he does, the whole process is a punishment. Like, you have to think, it's not like, hopefully he gets out and then like everything's going to be okay. This does permanent damage to people, what they're doing to him. You know that? Like this prolonged isolation, the psychological torture, the death threats, the spying, the plots to kidnap him. This is permanent damage to someone. And not just him, his family and friends, and it's really messed up. We can't allow this to happen. We can't have journalists being prosecuted for 10 years or chased for 10 years, not even in their own country, right? Remember, Assange is not even in his own country. They're trying to snatch him from the UK to the US, and he's neither British nor American. And for journalism, like, what is this? Like, does that mean if they let Julian Assange out, we're going to let them do this to someone else again? No. No, we can't have that. We can't have that. We can't have this now against Assange, and we can't have it ever again against anyone else. This is so messed up. So I'm very disheartened by today's decision. Anyone concerned with mental health or, you know, press freedoms, with having a functioning judiciary, should be concerned. And this is very heartbreaking. And I can tell you, I can confirm that the hearing, the full appeal at the High Court will take place on October 27th and 28th. This was decided today. Actually, the defense, first of all, the defense was asked about these dates. They proposed, I think, 17th and 18th, and then 27th and 28th. Basically, they gave them the option between two slots. And the defense said, well, they'd like as long as possible. They wanted a 4-day slot. And there was a lunch break, and then everyone came back at 2 p.m. BST. And then it was decided that it's going to be the 27th and 28th, and they are just going to go with that. So it won't be as long as the extradition hearing, although for Assange it's even longer because he's in prison the whole time. You're like, this is crazy. You know, the judge, she found that he's mentally unwell, he's physically unwell, he's in bad shape because of the prolonged torture and persecution, and then she still denied his bail request and left him in Belmarsh prison. It's so awful, really. It's so awful. And I think this is obscene that, you know, they're trying to discredit all of this undeniable evidence that Assange is suffering from this persecution, mentally and physically, just because one of the medical expert witnesses, one of them, didn't write down the name of his partner. What does that even mean? How does that negate the fact that he is not well physically and mentally? It doesn't negate it. This is obscene. It's absurd. So they're trying to get him on a technicality. Do you see what's happening? This is obscene. This entire case should not be happening. So there you go. There you go. That's it for now. That's all I can tell you and give you. And you know, I can just say again with Assange, he was seated in one room before from 10:30 a.m. until 1 p.m. British summertime, and then from 2 p.m. until whenever the hearing ended, he was taken to another room, and he was seated on a couch. In each instance, he was seated alone in the room, and just before lunch break, there was a guard who came in to get him, but we couldn't hear what they were saying. And he just, like I said, they went for lunch or something, and then after an hour, everyone was back, and he was in another room. At first, we couldn't see him in the second half at 2 p.m., but the judge asked if he can hear. They said yes, and then after a while, the video started working. We could see him. He was on a couch, and again, he's just looking really not well. It's very obvious. You really don't need to be a doctor to see this. And nevertheless, we have countless doctors who've already made this very clear that this persecution cannot go on. So, you know, again, I just want to give a huge a shout out to all the activists, to the legal team, to all the other journalists covering this. And yeah, there's a legal fund for Assange you can contribute to. I'm going to give you the URL. It's right here. So it's crowdjustice.com/Julian Assange. crowdjustice.com/Julian Assange. So they need money to help with this case. Obviously, fighting the United States in court is not cheap. So yeah, they need all the help they can get. So that's about it. If you guys have any questions, I'll start answering them now. If you have any comments, you can go ahead and shoot. We got a tip on Rockfin from Susan. Thank you very much, Susan. I appreciate that very much. We got another one from Brian. Thank you, Brian. Much appreciated. I'm checking on YouTube. Give me a second. I'm going off on YouTube. This one from Edward. Thank you, Edward. Edward says, the more the U.S. economy is trashed by their excessive money printing, and the more belligerent, aggressive, and on a war footing the U.S. becomes, the closer to U.S. collapse we get, the worse it'll be for the rest of the world. Yes, that's true of most empires. And yeah, I think I had Ben Norton on when we were talking about, he said something along the lines of, you know, it's when an empire is in decline that they commit their worst atrocities, and he was referring to the U.S. Yeah, it's not good. It's really not good. I'm grateful for the support. Thank you, Edward. And you know, I consider this is part of their imperialism, right? This court case against Assange. Of course it is, because he exposed it, criticized it, and you know, for the whole world. And so they can't have that. They need good PR. They need people like CNN reporters or BBC who, you know, who sugarcoat the killings. They can't have someone who actually, like, you know, shows you what happens. And that they'll punish you for that, because war is money. War is a racket, and they need to keep making money. So if you talk badly about their business, they will do this to you, unfortunately. It's not even talk badly. It's just, hey, look what happened. You know, reporting. Unbelievable. Just give me a second, please. I'm just loading your donations in YouTube. There's one here from TRN80, says, God bless both you and Assange. Thank you. You too, my friend. I very much appreciate that. And just give me a second over here. We got one over here on CashApp. This is from Independent Left News. Says, Free Julian, hashtag Free Julian. Thank you. From Independent Left News. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And this is also from Ross. Says, can't give more right now. This is for your great coverage of Julian Assange. No worries. I'm more than grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Ross. I'm very appreciative of that. I also got something over here from, I'm not going to say their name. They don't want me to, but they said, thank you for all your fine reporting. Very much appreciate your Twitter feed on Julian Assange case today. This travesty must end, and our observance of it, and our observance of it through you is so important. Thank you. You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Oh, they did put their name. It's Sora. Thank you, Sora. I'm very grateful for your support for independent journalism. Thank you. So, Glenn Greenwald was also kind enough to say this on Twitter. Very kind of him. So I appreciate that very much. And again, shout out to everyone else who's covering the case. If you guys have any questions, shoot, I can answer them, whether it's about the court case or something else. And man, I also went on RT to talk about this. I was live immediately after the case, and I tried to rattle off as much as I could and you know, make it very clear what's going on, because people, like, if you go and you read the mainstream media, they don't really report on this to begin with, and then when they do, they kind of obfuscate what's going on. Like, they'll just tell you, like, yeah, well, you know, this this obscure court procedure just took place. Yeah, but what does that mean? They don't actually break it down to you what happened. Whereas, you know, me and the other the people doing great work, you know, we're literally telling you what's being said in there. And yeah, so go read the whole thread on Twitter if you haven't. This is my thread, and my handle is written up there. It's at RichardMedhurst, RichMedhurst. And there's a whole thread. You can read everything that happened today. There you go. We got another tip over here from Frank. Frank says, keep fighting the good fight. Love your content. Thank you. I'm very grateful. Much appreciated. So, JM over here says, appreciate the work you do. Thank you very much, JM. I'm very grateful. You guys are very humbling, and I'm you can probably tell I'm exhausted, but I'm very grateful. I'm just it was a lot to do today, because I was you know, I was trying to type everything as fast as possible, and it's not the best audio. You can't really hear so well. So, you know, we do our best. I want to read one quote to you, which I think is extremely harrowing. So I just want to read one quote from the prosecution, the U.S. prosecution today at the High Court in regards to Assange. So, you know, the defense, Fitzgerald, was responding, and then Lord Justice Holyrood asked Claire Dobbin, who's the prosecution for the U.S., do you want to say anything? Do you want to reply? Here's what she said, okay? She said, regarding the report of Mr. Assange and his family being in a serious predicament or concerned by their safety, one can clearly observe that certainly went by the wayside when it suited Mr. Assange to leak information to the purpose of his own fame. Let me read that again to you. Mr. Assange and his family being in a serious predicament or concerned by their safety, you could clearly observe that this certainly went by the wayside when it suited Mr. Assange leaking information to the purpose of his own fame. I mean, this is so cold. This is so astonishing that she said that, you know? She's basically saying that, oh, he just leaked information to get famous, and these allegations that, you know, the name of his partner wasn't disclosed because of they feared for their safety, or you know, the fact that they tried to steal his baby's diapers from the embassy, or for the DNA. They spied on him. The CIA trying to, you know, again, we don't know if it's the CIA. We suspect it is. It's definitely U.S. intelligence. They were discussing planning a plan to kidnap and poison him potentially. And you're telling me this guy doesn't fear for his safety? Like, what qualifies? Like, what more has to happen for someone to legitimately fear for their safety? That's not enough, being hunted by U.S. intelligence. Jesus. And then she said, like, well, you know, if he was worried about his family's safety, he shouldn't have published anything. That's basically what she said. And she called him selfish. That is so insulting. That is absolutely unreal. I wrote it down because, again, it was a bit garbled. I wrote it down, and then I didn't post it in the thread. I'm going to put it in a second. Absolutely unreal. She literally said that in court today. Like, this is the attitude that we're dealing with. She knows that they spied on him. Like, the defense, again, said today that Judge Baretzer did not rule there was no spying. She just said she's not going to make any decision on it yet because the court case is still unfolding in Spain. Remember, this is a Spanish company, UC Global, and this Spanish company was contracted by American intelligence to spy on Assange because they were responsible for security in the Ecuadorian embassy. So there's a court case happening in Spain. So it's not been finalized yet. And, you know, one of the reasons why it was so shady that Craig Murray couldn't travel anymore just a few weeks ago, exactly when he was supposed to testify in this court case. How do you explain that? Because, you know, Craig Murray, he visited Assange a lot in the embassy, so he was also spied on. Stefania, right, who we talked about earlier, Stefania Morizzi, there's literally a picture of her phone being dismantled. They took apart her phone and photographed the insides of it. I don't know what else they did. This is unreal. Like, every person who went in that embassy was spied on. I've seen video of Glenn speaking with Assange, and you can see them talking. I don't know if you could hear it, but they spied on everyone. They're spying on him during Christmas. They're spying on him in the toilet in the ladies' room where he was talking to his lawyers. They had microphones under the fire extinguisher. The prosecution knows this. They're not stupid. They know this. And then they're coming and saying, well, you know, this is just an allegation. And if he was concerned for his safety, he shouldn't have published anything. Basically what they're saying. This is so insulting. Honestly, come on. That's a really cold thing to say. And the whole case is cold. I mean, no pun intended. It's just the whole thing is insulting and dangerous. Not just this sentence, obviously, but you know, it really speaks to how they're how brazen they are. No, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you agree? So anyway, that's something else I wanted to tell you about. And yeah, it's again. We've got a tip over here. This is from Satu. Thank you very much, Satu. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You're very generous. Thank you for supporting independent news. And yeah, I still have a few more things to do today about this high court hearing. I have to report a bit more on it. So thank you for tuning in. And thank you for caring about this. And please help fight the algorithm. So make sure you like the button. You hit the like button. You like the video. You comment. Maybe more people will see it on YouTube and so forth. And definitely share it because, you know, mainstream media are not going to tell you any of this. And very few people will. So we need to get the word out and let people know what's actually what's going on in that courtroom. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for all your kind donations. I'll leave all the links below. Definitely go donate to Assange's legal fund as well. And I'm very grateful for your support for independent media. Thank you so much. If you want to support anti-imperialist, independent journalism, this is a spot. I'm going to put the Patreon up on the screen and that's it. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Take care. Be good. Au revoir.